Alright, another round of will talk. Yeah, sorry, but this is sort of interesting stuff, I think. It's, we've been around and around on this stuff, and I don't know if we're actually getting... Well, I think we are, but okay, never mind. So I'm just doing the never mind program now. Alright, erase this bullshit about trying to explain what we're accomplishing and just get to the video. Okay, I'll just get to the video. So Anticonavad made a video talking about how the decision aspect of will, what is deciding, or is there a deciding kind of question, the open-ended ones, as is usual for his style, the rhetorical style. But it did get me thinking, and what we're really always coming back to is control. I mean, that's what people talk about is, free will, and the idea would be, do you have the ability, do you, some you program, have the ability to control you? So we know we have a you that needs controlling. So we know that some aspect of we, an us, a me, is some elements of a nature or desires or things in me, pieces of me, that need controlling. And therefore, that's why we invent this terminology. Do you have the capacity to control you? Do you have the capacity to control you? Is what it comes down to. And, there's no definition of this use. But I guess the bottom line would be there's this notion that your conscience, your good programs, your rightness should at all times be able to control your wrongness, and therefore you're responsible for your behavior, because the rightness programs should always have control over the wrongness ones. They should always be able to exercise authority and say, no, you will not do that, you will not steal, you will not do this, commit this sin, this crime, and therefore you're responsible when you do, because the controlling you should have controlled the stupid you. Okay, the controller you, the boss you, the better you should have. Well, I would agree with the idea that it should, in theory, but this is where we get down to, so what really does decide? And what is the hierarchy of decision? What decides what you are primarily? Asshole or asswipe or, better than. And, that's the real question, is how does something become a prime directive? How do you become incapable of committing the rape, incapable of being seduced, into the, compromising yourself in some debauchery, allowing your wants and desires that are sort of being facetly, whatever the right word is, conceded to be corrupt, nasty, selfish, not very thoughtful, not necessarily efficient for the general welfare. That's our nature. Our nature is kind of hostile to the general welfare because it is sort of obsessed with this individual need machine. It wants the better piece of cake. That's just the way it is. We're like that, unfortunately. But we can have programs that make us quite different. We can have programs where we gain gratification for being useful and helpful and necessary to somebody else's comfort. And, we can have those kind of programs running in us not only as theories, of rightness, but as personal desires, where we actually need that functionality. We need to be... we need those ego boost points. That's the competition we're in. Like pole vaulting, that's the, we could be pole vaulters, and this is the skill level you need, or the accomplishment you need to be successful at your sport. And it's like a sport for some people. They need to outcompete each other in their do-goodery. So they can, wear a little do-gooder badge and get emotionally off on the fact that they're useful and functional and productive, at least in that limited context definition. And that's part of our ego sometimes. Some people don't need that because they can rely on their good looks or something, right? I mean, that's just the truth, right? Some people just don't need to be good people because they're already ego gratified by the fact that they can kick somebody's ass, or they can run faster, or they can do something else, and they've already satisfied their need to be better, to feel good, that they're satisfactorily functioning, that they're alpha. They've already got enough alpha points, so they don't need to gain any by being a good person. But this is what decides, this is what controls you, okay, are these mixture of desires, this combination of desires, fight it out, and whatever wins controlled you, was the controlling desire, the controlling ambition, the controlling theme, the controlling principle. I've used those words before, principle. But yeah, it's a big, important concept. A controlling principle. You've declared something to be verboten, wrong, a non-starter, a not, and you don't do it. And it's a controlling ideal that you don't, recklessly run over children or something. I mean, some of the obvious ones come to mind, but there's lots of more subtle ones where you've made personal declarations, and this is certain things that you will never do because your psychology now has a controlling prime directive that says you lose all credibility, you lose all vitality, you lose all your mojo, even in your own eyes. You lose your ability to look at yourself in the mirror if you cross these lines. But again, so that's all the debate's really about, are these controlling, competing desires. We have many wills. So I guess that's where the word will got broken, was this idea that there's one will that wins, and it's always the same will, the good will. Well, that's not what happens. So the wills are just desires, competing incentive programs, mechanisms of thinking where there's some perception of advantage or purpose or function, and a desire, a hunger, a need, a want, a wish, a hope. These are all competing wills within you, and the one that's actualized in terms of the one that gains control of your behavior when you have an opportunity to behave. Some of them you can't behave. You can just wish. You just wish. There's no way to pull wish levers. There's no way to make wishes more likely to happen. Even throwing a coin in the wishing well. All right, there's an action, but we know that's kind of futile and stupid. But it has controlled people, right? Many billions of times people have tossed the coin into the fountain, wishing and hoping and thinking they can control the world through something that's controlled them. So the wish program won the battle. They wished, they threw the coin to solidify the wish as a control. There, it's controlled me in the hope that this activity, this ritual, will control the outcome. And what was wished will somehow happen. But in most realistic cases, our wishes, our wants, our desires have to be actualized in some actual strategic way. You have to get the girl drunk before you can, rape her in unconsciousness, kind of thing. So if you're wanting to do something, you have to strategize to accomplish it and your actions have to be, there's a complex stream of actions, controlling actions that you must participate in to, to have your will fully manifested, completed, satisfied, the will satisfied, to have the will own you, control you, and have you accomplish the task. So I think that this whole free will debate probably should be converted into a control debate. And what controls you? Obviously, it'd be stupid to say you control you. So it's obvious, again, logically, to just say, so obviously it's not about a you controlling you. It's about an understanding or a belief or an idea or a notion, a thought, a principle, controlling your other wills and saying, no, this will has to be satisfied first. First, do no harm, or whatever the principle would be. That has to be satisfied first. Then you can see if there's room to satisfy these other aspirations, these other wills. So again, I go back to my prime directive rhetoric, but that's what your brain establishes, is primary wills and secondary wills and cursory wills. So you have these levels of will inside of you, and they compete for what will be given control. Control will be distributed based on a competition between the solidity, the hardness, the firmness of these principles, mechanisms, ideals. And and I guess I would argue that clearly there are different things competing. They have different weaponry in a way. So if you take something like a hunger, say you haven't eaten for a week, and you're really, really, really hungry. Well, it's easy for you to be seduced by a circumstance that allows you to steal a loaf of bread. So you might have a conscious principle that says never steal, but you'll have this aching physical necessity. And this is where we get into the heroin addict or some other drug addict now being compelled by such a strong necessity to satisfy the physical pain, to kill the pain, that they're willing to inflict pain to get the means to satisfy their pain. And so it just gives evidence to the fact that you can't create a standard playing field, a standard fight with standard game rules, with standard strength of the competitors, because the desire at certain times is incredibly strong, and at other times the principles and the integrity and the need of a strong ego is very strong. So ironically, there's times when you are ego weak, where you need ego points, and that's when your principles are the strongest. It's because you need to undo for a bad or a wrong or a trespass, and so then your goodness is made better because of your sense of badness. They're just an ironic turntable, and but there's still this fundamental battle between the strength of the hunger, the desire, and the strength of the principles, the ideals, the knowledge, and whether it can create controlling inhibition, controlling authority, whether it can take authority of your conscious body, your control, if it takes control of the mechanism that is you. And I think some of that can be argued through that, when you have a clarity of thought, a clarity of philosophy. The principles get firmer and stronger. And when you have an absolute knowledge, that you can't justify your pleasure at somebody else's pain, then it becomes impossible for you to kick them to the curb or something. That ain't going to happen. You're going to be incapable. Unless, in fact, there's a circumstance that, makes it possible, like they just raped your sister or some other kind of bullshit. So that's really just an outline of the idea that it's not free will, it's free wills. And that would make no sense.